Okay, I want us to talk about multiplying times 10 times 100 and times 1,000. And so you see the problem we have at the top of this page, which is 43 times 10. I want us to think about the place value of this because we're going to learn a very easy way to multiply times 10. We don't have to multiply anything out. Okay, so let's recognize that 43, what is that? Well, it's 4 tens and 3 ones, which is why I've written 4 tens, 3 ones times 10. And that's the same thing as 43 times 10. And then I did it below. You can see that I actually did it like we're using place value disc, and so we have 4 tens, they're in pink, and then 3 ones, they're in blue. And if we multiply times 10, I don't have to multiply the whole number times 10 to start, but what I actually can do is just multiply each of those cubes by 10. And so let's start with the pink tens. If I have a 10, and then I multiply the 10 by 10, well, what is 10 times 10? And you should recognize that 10 times 10 is 100. And so I'm going to take my first 10, and make it 100. And then that means my next 10 will be 100, my next 10 will be 100, and finally my last 10 will also be 100. And so 4 tens, or 40 times 100, is 400. Now let's multiply the ones times 10. And of course 1 times 10 is 10. And so let me replace my 3 ones with 3 tens, because 3 times 10 is 30. And so what I'm left with is 4 hundreds and 3 tens. And so I could go ahead and write that in words up here. 4 tens and 3 ones times 10 is the same thing as 4 hundreds and then 3 tens. In other words, whenever I multiply times 10, my digits actually stay the same, but they change a place value. And so you should recognize that 4 hundreds and 3 tens is 430. 43 times 10 is 430. And I'm sure many of you recognize what our thing is going to be, is that when we multiply times 10, since a 10 has just 1 0 in the number right here, then we're just going to add 1 0 to our 43. 43 times 10 is 430. When we multiply times 10, if we add a 0, then all the digits will get one place larger. And so let's try, if that's how it works with 10, then let's try it with hundreds next. I want us to try 43 times 100. So this time, instead of doing 43 times 10, we do 43 times 100. And so if I wanted to once again draw my 43, I could draw it using 4 tens, and then 3 ones. And if I wanted to multiply that times 10, times 100, well, that's like doing it times 10, which changes it one place, and then times 10 again. So we're actually going to change 2 places. So my tens are no longer, they're not tens and they're not hundreds, but they are now thousands. 43 times 10, 43 has 4 tens, and I want to make it have 4 thousands. And so what I have is, there's 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, and finally my 4,000. Now my ones, well, we're doing them times 100, and we know that 1 times 100 is 100. So my 3 ones are now 3 hundreds. And we notice that when we multiply times 100, we're not just moving one place, but we're actually moving 2 places. So I'm left with 4,000s, 300s, and no tens or ones. And so when I multiply times 100, my digits move 2 places. And the way I show that is all I have to do is just add 2 zeros. So let's review that real quick. If we do 43 times 10, we add 1 0 because we're multiplying times 10. If we do 43 times 100, we add 2 zeros. And I bet by now you've probably got a good idea what would happen if we multiplied times 1,000. But let's practice just in case. So in 43 times 1,000, we still have 4 tens to start with. and we still have 3 ones to start with. But this time we're doing it times 1,000, and that means that we actually need to move them 3 places. 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000, times 10 is 10,000. And so we're actually going to go all the way up to the 10,000s place on this number. And so what I'm going to wind up having is 4 10,000. And then 1 times 1,000 is 1,000, and so I'll make my 4,000s. I mean, I'm sorry, it should be 3. There should be 3,000s now. And so if I put those together, then what I have is 4 10,000s, 3,000s, and no hundreds, tens, or ones. 43 times 1,000 is 43,000. I multiplied times 1,000, so I added 3 zeros. And so let's take a moment to review one more time what we've seen here. What we've seen is that 43 times 10 is 430. If I multiply times 10, all I have to do is add a 0. We've seen that 43 times 100 is 4,300. If I multiply times 100, I just add 2 zeros. And finally, we've seen that 43 times 1,000 is 43,000 because I added 3 zeros. And I can replace the 43 with any number, but the multiplying by 10, 100, and 1,000 simply being added in zeros will always continue to be the case.